Welcome back to News Talk. We turn now to the race for the White House. A leading Republican insider has wargamed the GOP primary scramble now underway, and he sees a contest that could last well into spring. Ben Ginsberg's analysis now online at Politico.com. With us now here in the studio, Steve Shepard. He's campaigns and elections editor for Politico, and it's always great having you here. Thanks very much for your time.
Always great to be here, Bruce. Thanks.
Great read. As you and I were sitting here waiting to go on, I was giving it a second read through. There's so much focus, of course, understandably, on the Iowa caucus, which is a couple weeks away now, and the New Hampshire first in the nation primary, which follows Iowa by not that much.
8 days.
But then the calendar is chock full of contests that go from one coast to the other over a very long period of time, I think one would have to say, months. And Ben Ginsberg sees potentially a drawn-out affair.
Right. First, I have to say, this was supposed to be a condensed primary calendar. You'll recall 8 years ago, the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary were in early January. This year, they're in early February, and the final primaries are in early June, trying to condense the calendar down to basically 4 months.
To limit the fratricide, right?
Right. The problem is on the Republican side, there are so many candidates, and there's a lot of belief that the current front-runner, at least from a national perspective, may not survive this gamut of primaries, particularly outside of some of these early states. Look, Iowa and New Hampshire are important because they generate momentum. They help cull the field, or that's the idea at least, is they help cull the field, decide who's a serious contender, who gets to go on. But they're very small states, and they award very few delegates, and they award them proportionally in a way that really splits them up. They're not, when it comes down to getting the 2,000 delegates and change, it's necessary to win the Republican nomination. They're not that important. They're important, though, for momentum.
And the thing I love about, I'm into politics and I'm into sports, and it seems like there's always an analogy from one that feeds the other. In this case, it would be like saying a team that gets a field goal 3 minutes into the first quarter of the Super Bowl, you love the momentum it brings,
right,
but 3-0 with 57 minutes to play, it's a nothing, right? It's not going to be the decisive thing by a long shot, and that's what I hear you making. That's the point I hear you making with regard to New Hampshire and Iowa.
That's a pretty good analogy. Look, I'd recommend that anyone interested in sort of the intricacies of this process check out Ben Ginsberg's piece. Ben is probably the dean of Republican election lawyers at this point, and he has gamed this out week by week by week.
And so what is it kind of summarize?
Yeah, so we're going to do on the Republican side, the Democrats have a slightly different calendar, but on the Republican side, Iowa's February 1st, New Hampshire's February 9th, South Carolina is February 20th, Nevada is February 23rd. Those 4 states are the states that everybody's focusing on right now, but really they don't give you that many delegates. The first really big test when it comes to accumulating the delegates necessary to win the nomination is on March 1st. That is known as it's the SEC primary, because a number of states in the southeastern United States, plus Texas, states that have schools in the Southeastern Athletic Conference are having primaries. Tennessee will be big. Texas will be big. There are also some northern states that are holding primaries that day, states like Massachusetts and Vermont that'll be important. That's a big day. That is basically Super Tuesday. March 15th is also going to be a critical day. That's the first time at which states can award their delegates entirely to the overall winner. All the other states are divvying them up based on congressional district or based on proportion of the vote won. On March 15th, some of the states can award all of their delegates to the overall winner. So if you win by 1 vote, you win all the delegates in some of those states, as opposed to just carving them up.
The folks who are, let's say, only moderately successful in the early going have a huge makeup opportunity if their views resonate, or if the issues dovetail in such a way that they catch fire, or whatever, a big endorsement, right? Some set of factors aligning to give somebody a real catch-up moment.
Right, and states that will vote on this day include Ohio, Florida, North Carolina. These are large states. These are also important states in the general election. These are states that candidates want to do well in, and especially if in one of these states it's a winner-take-all state, finishing second is not good enough. You're at this point, once we get to this point in the nominating process, it's all about the race to win the number of delegates necessary to win the nomination, and you have to finish first.
Ben Ginsberg's piece, which I mentioned at the outset, is online right now at Politico.com. It's called Why the GOP Primary Could Be Even Crazier Than You Think, an insider's guide to 19 long weeks of chaos. This was like catnip for me and very interesting, and took me into places I hadn't thought of the race going. Is this something that the insiders, that's been kind of baked into the cake for campaign strategists, for Cruz and Trump and Bush and Rubio and all the rest all along?
To some degree, I think that's true. You know, look, everyone wants to catch fire early and knock out the people competing in their lane. So if you're Marco Rubio, you know that in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, you need to beat Jeb Bush. You need to beat Chris Christie. You need to beat John Kasich in New Hampshire. To knock them out then, so that when you get down to these other states, you represent that wing of the party, particularly in a state like Florida or Ohio, that where they tend to nominate potentially a more of an establishment mainstream Republican candidate. You want to knock out the other contenders for that lane in the party. Ted Cruz would love to beat Donald Trump in Iowa and take out some of his momentum. He'd love to finish second in New Hampshire. He'd love to win South Carolina so that when they get down to states like Tennessee and Texas where he has an advantage of being from there, he can win those. Those are more delegate-rich states. He can knock out some of the other conservatives on that lane and really then face head-to-head and try to accumulate and outrun in the delegate race the candidate on the establishment side.
So if, as seems likely, it's a marathon, not a sprint, what traits get rewarded? What will the folks who are still in a good position, deep into the process, or maybe in the process of emerging as the winner, what traits, what characteristics, whatever will they have?
Well, there's ways to game the system, and that is what I'm going to look at, the really sophisticated campaigns that try to, if this turns into a race for the delegate number and it's really competitive, it's the campaigns that do the little things. It is the campaigns that know, I'm not going to invest in that state which is winner take all because I have a low chance of winning and I'm likely to put in resources and end up with 0 delegates. Instead, I'm going to invest in some of these proportional states or states that have award their delegates by congressional districts. I'm going to focus in on those congressional districts where I think I have the best chance and not focus where I don't have much of a chance. The campaigns that do that, look at, and also there are territories that get to vote and get to be part of this process. That was one of the things that on the Democratic side, Barack Obama did great in 2008 against Hillary Clinton, was he won a lot of the territories that play a role in this process and do award delegates. And that was one of the things that put him over the top when it came down to May and June, and we were still talking about the nomination being up for grabs. That clinched him the magic number of delegates to win the nomination. Campaigns that do the little things, that's what I'm going to be focused on if it truly does come down to May and maybe even June and right down to the wire.
The Ben Ginsberg piece on Politico.com talks about the GOP, but let's talk about the Democrats. You referenced them a moment ago. They do have a different calendar, but I think a lot of people are wondering, particularly now, if Bernie Sanders wins Iowa and New Hampshire and comes out not with an exciting number of delegates, but with undeniable momentum, do Democrats find themselves with a long slog, a race that goes till spring?
I think that's certainly possible. You know, not only can he win Iowa and New Hampshire, but the Democrats' calendar in the back end of February is flipped. Nevada votes before South Carolina on the Democratic side. And Nevada's a caucus state where organization and energy really matter to get people to show up on a Saturday evening and you know, in the Las Vegas Strip and at a casino to vote in their caucus.
I hear there are other things one could do with a Saturday night in.
Well, and a lot of folks who work in the hospitality industry, it's difficult to get them to the caucus. It was one of the great things that the Obama campaign did very well. Both campaigns did do very well with the culinary union in 2008. That kind of energy is going to matter there. Look, there are certainly states like South Carolina. Bernie Sanders can win a lot of the white liberals that Barack Obama won in Iowa, for example. Barack Obama was then able to signal to African Americans who make up a majority of the South Carolina Democratic electorate that I can win this race, you should support me, and that's why he clobbered Hillary Clinton in South Carolina. Bernie Sanders doesn't necessarily have that advantage in some of these other states where African Americans and Latinos make up significant, sizable portions of the Democratic primary electorate. So it's going to be interesting. Democrats also have superdelegates, party leaders who get to weigh in this process and are unbound by the results in their state. they get a vote when it comes down to the convention. And Hillary Clinton has an advantage there that Barack Obama, that she didn't necessarily in 2008. Look, she was the popular choice, but superdelegates were willing to go with Barack Obama. Bernie Sanders, he's not as palatable. He's not even really a Democrat. He's an independent. And Democratic superdelegates are not going to flock to him the way they did to Barack Obama.
The idea of Hillary Clinton being in a one-on-one, head-to-head, long-lasting contest with another single candidate running into spring, it's got to bring back crazy deja vu memories. Deja vu all over again.
I mean, I think it does for her folks. Yeah. And the one thing I will say is that March sets up a lot better for her than it would have against Barack Obama or another more credible Democrat. Bernie Sanders has his early state energy. What he's able to, if he can win Iowa, New Hampshire, particularly New Hampshire in a blowout, what he's able to do with that, it's an open question.
Steve Shepard, campaigns and elections editor for Politico. Great stuff as always. Thank you very much for stopping by. Great having you here.
Always.
We're back with more News Talk in a moment.